Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alec Reed. This is my channel, Alec Reed, and today we are reading I Still Think You're Beautiful, Chapter 17, Draco, on Wattpad. I do want to let you guys know that there is homophobia throughout this entire story, so just make sure that you are being careful of that, if that is something that you have issues with. But anyway, like, subscribe, comment down below, whether it's saying hello or whether it's just giving recommendations. Either way I respond. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and let's jump right into the video. Chapter 17, Draco. I was worried for Harry. All this must be extremely stressful, but he still seemed distant. I keep giving him sympathetic glances over breakfast, telepathically pleading him to eat something, but his fork stayed where it was. Breakfast ended as soon as it began, and I grabbed Harry's arm as we all filed out of the great hall. He looked as glum as ever. "You okay?" I asked into his ear. He just looked back at me with a weak smile. I took that as a no. We walked the many steps down to the potions classroom. "Want to sit with me?" I asked, and Harry nodded so hard I thought his head was going to fall off. We sat near the back, Weasel a few seats in front, and started to brew something crazy that Slughorn said we needed for our news. Every time Ron glances in our direction, I'd give him a glare and a smirk at his swollen nose. The lesson finished quickly, and we made our way to Transfiguration. I sat next to Harry again. The teacher was late. About 5 minutes later, he came rushing in carrying a few books, and looked very flustered. "Right, class, sorry I'm late. Today will be..." He turned to face the front, and his eyes locked onto Harry. Harry was staring at the table, and unaware of the teacher's gaze. Everyone else was, though. They all shifted their eyes from Harry to the professor and back again. "Sir?" I asked. "Right, yeah, sorry. For those who weren't here last time, I'm Professor Zeleny in place of McGonagall. Today we will be transfiguring bigger objects." We all nodded and got out our wands with our books. I gave Harry a nudge as the Professor Zeleny trotted over to us. "Mr. Potter." Harry slowly looked up. "Yes, sir." "Could we talk after this lesson? I need you to revise the chapters you missed, and would like to give you a rundown on what you need to read." He looked at me and gave him a smile. Sir, I've got some plans already," he stuttered. "It'll only take a few minutes." "Okay." He nodded, and we got back to work. "Wait for me afterwards, yeah?" "Of course." And we continued the lesson of transfiguring the desk into a bed. We managed a mattress, but that was about it. Then the tables were turned into their usual state, the lesson had ended, and I waited for Harry outside the classroom, trying to listen to what was going on. I wasn't put in Slytherin for nothing. "Right, Mr. Potter. I need you to go over chapters 7 and 8, okay?" Professor Zeleny asked. "Yes, Professor." "Do you understand what you have to do?" "I guess," he sighed. "Do you understand it or not?" "No, Professor," Harry answered. "Right. Seeing as you missed a week's worth of lessons, I need to tutor you. You will catch up. How does next Tuesday sound?" "Thank you, Professor," Harry said, not forgetting his manners. He came out of the door a few seconds later. These lessons are so stupid. Why do I need to transfigure a bloody bed when I killed one of the most powerful wizards of all time?" he vented, panting hard. "Harry, what's bothering you?" I asked calmly. "Everything. Can you distract me?" He looked at me, pleading. "Sure, follow me." I led him through the corridors, and we passed a group of third years. One of the girls strolled up to us. "Excuse me, my friend was wondering if you two are a thing." She fiddled with her fingers. "Harry, would you like to answer that?" I looked at him. It's complicated, but we're working on it." He smiled at her, and she squealed and ran back to her friends, who, as we passed, all squealed in unison. I carried on walking and felt Harry's hand slip into mine. I smiled at him. I held him outside, where I'd set up a blanket and pillows on a small boat. Harry grinned at me as we stepped onto a satin little boat, the picnic bag under the seat. "This is the perfect distraction," he said. "I rowed us out into the middle of the Black Lake." "Good. That was my plan all along." I set the oars down and pulled out the picnic bag. "Now, I'm going to force you to eat because you don't. I will hex you and push you into the water." He put his hands up in defense and chewed on the treacle tart I had handed him. When we, mainly me, had finished the majority of the food, we sat in between the slats in the boat, our legs hanging over the edge. We looked into the sky, making shapes out of the clouds. "Draco?" Harry asked after a while. "Yes, Harry." I circled the palm of his hand with my finger. "Thank you." He grabbed my hand and linked our fingers together, resting his head on one of the seats. "You're welcome. For what exactly?" "For changing, for showing me a future, for being you." I leaned over the seats and stared into his brilliantly green eyes. I removed his glasses, and his eyes brightened considerably. I leaned forward as Harry leaned up, and our lips met in the middle. We pulled apart and slowly swallowed each other's breaths. Unable to contain ourselves anymore, Harry held my neck and pulled me down to a fiery, passionate kiss. My hands worked my way around his body, exploring every crevice, each line along his perfect physique. We pulled apart again. Harry's eyes filled with curiosity and passion. I leaned in and created a pattern of kisses along his neck. Harry whimpered in anticipation. I smirked and made my way back to his lips. Harry rolled over so he's on top of me and smirks like he knows something I don't. And he leans his lower body down onto mine. The boat rolled with us, tipping everything out, including us. We surfaced and giggled into each other's arms, still kissing as we swam back to shore. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect day. That was, until I saw Harry wince as he changed his sopping wet top. Chapter 18. Harry. Today was the best day I could have ever wished for. Draco and I, completely soaked as we changed into our pajamas, drying our clothes with a quick spell. I tried to ignore the pain of my arm, but I couldn't mask the wince that came from my mouth. "Are you okay?" Draco asked. "Yeah, just cold." I shivered a bit and smiled. "Thank you for today," I said quickly, trying to change the subject. "You're very welcome." He smiled back at me, and I continued changing. I grabbed the nearest jumper I could, and only realized when I put it on that it was a slithering green. I didn't take it off, though. It was too warm. "Isn't that my jumper?" Draco asked. "No, it's mine." I pulled on some jeans, as Draco did the same. We both walked into the common room and sat together by the fire. Draco read a book as I led on him. He was quite comfy. I was just about to go to sleep when someone came thundering in through the portrait. I was laid on Draco. I didn't see who it was, but Draco did. "What do you want, weasel?" My boyfriend sneered. "Could ask you the same, ferret." I sat up at that, slowly, and glared at Ron. "If you haven't got anything intelligent to say, don't say anything at all. So, you really shouldn't be talking." I shifted, so I was opposite Draco, our legs intertwined. Still glaring at him, I noticed his nose was quite swollen and red. My glare must have faltered, and he began to look at me weirdly. I turned to look at the fire, ignoring the eyes at the back of my head, until I heard footsteps trailing away. I sighed with relief and smiled at Draco. That could have been worse. "Did you see his nose?" He smirked at me. I connected the dots. "Did you do that?" The day Weaslett told him and he talked to you, he started saying all this stuff when he came out of the classroom. So I floored him. He shrugged. I shuffled back to my original place. Harry? He asked. Yeah, Draco? Can I kiss you? I turned to look at him, meeting eyes to eyes, our faces millimeters apart. I closed the miniature gap between us, now completely comfortable kissing him in front of anyone. And in a moment, it was just us, and the fire crackling behind, casting our merged shadows onto the wall behind us. It was our moment. We broke apart, and I rested my head on his shoulder. I've got my meeting with Delaney tomorrow, I told him. What time? 10, I groaned. You'll catch up soon. Sleep came over me as my eyes closed, and Draco's breathing lulled me to sleep. I woke up a couple hours later in my bed, panting from another panic attack. Draco must have taken me up to bed and gone to his. I was a bit disappointed, but smiled at the thought of Draco carrying me upstairs. I looked over to his bed, his pale face immensely beautiful in the moonlight. I walked out onto the hallway, trying not to make any noise at 2 a.m. The sound caught my ears, as I saw two boys drunkenly coming towards me, Neville and Blaze. I hid in the shadows as they opened the door to their room, and stumbled in. I smiled and walked down the common room, the fire now out, the room eerily quiet, too quiet. There was someone here, though. My eyes scanned the dimly lit room. Someone was laid on the sofa. I crept over to find Ron asleep, not snoring like he usually does, his cheeks tear-stained. I missed my friend. I quickly grabbed a piece of parchment and wrote him a quick letter, placing it by his head. I raced upstairs. The next morning I woke up before Draco, surprisingly, and stayed in the shower, staring manically at my bleeding arm before he started banging on the door. I'll be out in a minute, I shouted, wrapping a towel around my waist and frantically searching for a clean bandage, but I wasn't quick enough. Salazar, Harry, you take so long. He looked at me, at my arm, at the dropped bandage on the floor. I turned away from him, dropping to the ground and picking up the bandage. He didn't say anything. He just crouched down next to me and held my fumbling hands. I'm sorry, I croaked. Why? You shouldn't be sorry. But please, 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 if anything's making you feel like this, do talk to me. It doesn't just affect you, Harry. I leaned into him. I didn't deserve him. He was perfect. Thank you. I'm sorry. Stop saying sorry all the time. Okay. He smiled at me and picked me up off the floor. Where is it? Draco asked, looking around. What? What do you use to do it? I swallowed and gestured to my toiletries bag. He shuffled through it, found the tin. Is this it? I nodded, and he walked out of the bathroom, closing the door behind him. A few minutes later, he came back in and pushed me. Get dressed. I smirked and pulled on some clothes. I heard the shower turn on and rummaged through the books until I found my Transfiguration textbooks. I shoved them in my bag. Draco came out of the shower and got dressed. I shut it up behind him and ran my hands through his hair. He turned around and we met at the lips. I care, you know, he said into my mouth. I know. I smirked and left him to get dressed. I walked down to the common room with my bag and wand. In the common room sat Blaze and Neville. I gave them a knowing smirk as I sat down in the armchair next to them. They looked at me strangely. A few moments later, Ron came down. There were no sneers, no glares, just nods. He must have read my note then. He walked straight out of the portrait, and then Draco walked down the stairs, as perfect as ever. I smiled and ran to meet him. Grabbing his hand, we walked to the great hall for breakfast. I was on my way to Zelani's classroom and politely knocked on the door. "Come in," said the teacher's voice. I pushed open the door. He was sat at the desk, with many books scattered across it. "Ah, Mr. Potter, do sit down." I sat at the nearest desk to his. "Would you like some tea?" I nodded. Why not, right? I sipped my tea. It tasted quite bitter, but was sweet. I opened my books, and Zelani began his tutoring. Alright, that is the end of today's episode. In the next episode of I Still Think You're Beautiful, we will start at 19. Do like, subscribe, and comment, whether it's just to say hello or whether it's to give recommendations. I respond either way. Anyway, good morning, good afternoon, or good night. Goodbye, ladies, gentlemen, and everybody in between, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, friends.